Welcome to the Footy with Mates. Happy Saturday if you're listening. I've got a rough voice because we performed last night. I feel like I should say that. But let me do the intro. Here we go. In this gentleman's 364 game career, is that right, bro?
That's right.
He accrued the title the Smiling Assassin as he grabbed All-Australian after All-Australian, 6 in total, as the leading goal kicker for the Western Bulldogs. He's a regular voice in the media now on Fox and SEN, as well as a member of the Zena sports team, the creators of Protective Sport, the Protective Sport Vest for women playing AFL. Please welcome this week's mate, Brad Johnson. Can I ask? Hey,
how
mate,
are you?
Good, mate. I'm going to start
Thanks for having
with
me on too.
No, absolute pleasure.
It's great to be here.
It's an honour to have you here, mate. I want to talk about in 2017 or 2018. I went to Perth for the prelim between the D's and the Eagles, and I got the early flight. Mm-hmm. And the night before, I was going to bed watching Fox Footy on the telly, and I fell asleep watching. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and I knew I had to get up. I had to get up at like 5 a.m. And you were doing a whatever the game the night before. It must have been Richmond, Collingwood, and Collingwood were through to the grand final.
At the G.
Right. And then I was like 11 o'clock and you were still on telly, and I went to bed, woke up at 5, went to the airport, got on the plane, and you're on the plane. and I was like, I'm not gonna talk to him because that's enough shit. That's enough stuff. But then I went, I'm gonna do it. The nuff overrode me. Yeah. So then you were just sitting there. It was up the front.
1A.
No, it was up the front of the plane. It was you and Sarah Jones, I think maybe. And I went, you were on the telly when I was going to sleep. And then you smiled and said something funny back.
I wouldn't have been funny, but I would have said something.
But it was like, it really struck a chord with me because you were like what people see of you either when you played or in the media, you are always smiling and happy. Is this a joke? Or how are you so
don't
positive?
put it on.
No.
It'd be too hard to put it on, wouldn't it?
How come you're such an outgoing...
I just always... Well, I love footy. That's my number one, right? So that's why I've always sort of been up and about in that footy environment. I do have my moments. Don't worry about that, like we all do. But I think I've just had a positive outlook on everything that I've done. Maybe I was brought up a little bit that way, a little bit of my own, and I just embrace everything. And everyone's equal in my eyes. We're all there to make a difference somehow and do our thing and have our journey in life. So just embrace everybody because, some people are avid football people, some aren't, but, they're still up for a chat. It's good.
Do you, when you say you were raised that way, did your parents sort of instill that in you reckon?
A little bit. It was probably more just my natural way of who I am as a person. Right. But I've always sort of had that. I've been a bit of an Energizer bunny my whole life. You know what I mean? I didn't need to sort of drink any Red Bulls or do anything like that to get myself up and going. It's just the way that I've always been.
So you came through the Western Jets, yes?
Yes, correct.
And what year were you drafted? Like what
you mightn't have been born.
No.
So I was drafted in November 93.
Yeah.
So a while ago now. But it was the start of when the draft started to become serious. Yeah. So I was invited to the draft, didn't want to go, didn't think I was good enough to be drafted. My conversation with the Bulldogs was the night before the draft, and I got a phone call from Mark Kleiman, and he said, if you're around, do you want to come to the Dogs? I'm like, bloody oath I do.
This on the landline as well.
This is on the landline, yeah. This is on the home phone. So I spoke to about maybe 12 clubs in that lead up.
I remember because in my early years of watching the footy, I remember the draft maybe being on Channel 7.
That's right, it was.
Yeah, and it would more just be like a photo of someone or just text and their height.
Yep.
So what was the actual draft?
There'd be stuff these days that you can't even put the height up anymore.
Now you've got because you've covered a few drafts as well now, haven't you? There's always like a Peking duck song or like a cool trendy song, and they're all in the room and they're all having a great time. But what was the draft combine like in the 90s?
Oh no, I didn't go. Didn't have one.
Nothing.
So the way it worked when I was coming through was, and I'm sort of glad it didn't because I was good at it. Athletic, I was good, but I had no flexibility, right? And the big test back in the day was the sit and reach test.
Sit and reach?
Sit and reach, which was basically there's a board and you'd try and go past your toes and how far you go. They'd measure it in centimetres past the point of your toes. I was like negative 35. I can't get to my shins. So I did testing at Essendon. I did testing at a couple of other clubs and the running stuff was fine. But when it came to the actual the strength or the flexibility.
You weren't strong.
I was no good, right, as a youngster.
Right.
So that I think that played against me a little bit. The good thing about the Dogs is they didn't do any testing, right? So,
what do you mean? They just
honestly, they just rang me the night before and said, "Will you come if you're available?" I'm like, "Absolutely."
So someone had been watching you clearly.
Well, they do. It was around that time where scouting was always a big part of it, but it just started to go to another level where the draft was televised. The seriousness around clubs speaking to you was at a different juncture because the under-18 competition changed that a lot, and it was only the second year of the under-18 competition, so it was new to everybody in terms of how they were going to assess the guys coming through, plus work on their recruitment strategies that are different today because now there's draft combines and they can look at you, interview you, clubs talk to you, coaches, the whole lot. They talk to family and school and do the whole thing.
Did you go for the Dogs growing up?
I did.
Did you really?
which is great. So I was sort of lucky. Although my mum was sort of not really support anyone. My dad was Essendon, and so I grew up watching Essendon Hawthorn grand finals in the 80s, and then from there the rest of my family were all Bulldogs. So Williamstown actually in the VFA was probably my number one team.
You're a Seagull.
I would love them. We'd go watch them all the time.
The Williamstown Seagulls have. I know people who go for Footscray go for the Doggies.
Yes,
but they spiritually go for the Gulls.
That's it.
And you go out to that ground and it's incredible.
It was phenomenal growing up there.
What's the history of the Williamstown Seagull? Why were they never a VF like an AFL team
it's just I suppose it's the nature of the way that it went. The VFA competition was strong when we were growing up. It was the VFL which was top tier, and then second tier was the VFA, and crowds were big. Every time you go watch a home game at Williamstown, it was packed, it was pumping. So I love that. That was good fun.
And there's like the wind. It's like wind.
It was a howling, always one way. Yeah. And you'd see sometimes they'd kick into the wind, and the ball would be nearly blowing back over their heads. But it was a great place to sort of go and watch local footy, and even the guys that we used to watch back in the day, they were stars in my eyes. Then I'd go watch the Bulldogs at the Whitten Oval with my cousins, and sneak into the cheer squad, and we had a bit of fun doing it.
You've got a bit of the Jason Dunstall's about you for me, Brad. In that, in that you're the greatest to ever play. No, in that
kick 1,000 goals.
Yeah, well, because you are so at home in the media, and you it's such a part of, I guess, a generation of knowing who you are. There'd be people listening to this who don't know actually how good you were. But yeah, as I said at the start, you were an All-Australian 6 times, which is. I don't. Do you know how many people have been 6-time All-Australians?
No, I couldn't tell you. Not too many though, I don't think.
And then you were right. You're in the team of the century for the Dogs, and then you were the leading goal kicker, I think, for the Dogs 5 times as well.
The team of the century was an interesting one though at the Dogs. So I was young when they put me in.
Yeah.
So
how old were you? Like you would have been.
I might have been 21. Maybe.
You're in the team of the century for the Dogs at 21.
I could have been. I would be able to look up when it was actually released. That team. I'm not sure. I might have been a little bit older, but still, I was on the bench because I was the youngest by a fair way. There was a bit of conjecture around my inclusion in that.
If social media,
because I'd started to come on in the game, but I hadn't really set the world on fire yet.
Tom and I are no good at footy. When you played footy and you would be the leading goal kicker for a team and be a genuine like gun who knows how to kick goals. What can you express what that feels like? Did you ever go into games feeling like I'm going to be great today, or was it always I hope, and then you would figure it out?
It's probably a combination of both.
Yeah.
Sometimes you went in knowing exactly who your opponent would be, and if the midfield got it right, you knew you'd have a reasonable day.
Yeah.
There were times that you're a bit surprised by your opponent and you wouldn't have prepared as well because you didn't expect them, so they might get you every now and then. But most of the time, because of the way, because I'm not a big guy, I had to prepare, and I had to prepare for the tall and the small, depending who I played on. And I knew my preparation was the most important thing, to expose my opponent the best possible way that I could. And that's how I went into every single week. So I knew exactly what the opponent didn't like really doing, and I would take them there consistently. So if I was on a bigger guy, I'd get up the ground, run him back, knowing that endurance-wise he wouldn't be able to go with me. And if I'm on a smaller guy, I take him to the goal square, and you know that they weren't that keen. But if they stood in front, I knew what to do. If they were right-hand dominant spoil, I knew to stand on the other side. So all little things that you had to learn about your opponents back in the day that would set you apart, because that gives you the confidence to jump out there knowing that, hey, this is going to be full on today, but I know I'm going to be okay.
What I'm hearing is that, like, you know that you can kick goals, like you know how to do that, but the challenge of a football game is what conflict or what barricades the other team is going to put up against you.
That's right.
It's opponent based as opposed to team based almost.
Which is more team based now. Like it's team defense and we came through in a real sweet spot, I think, where it was me v you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And whoever was better on the day, better prepared. So, and we relied on our team, like I relied on our mids and backs a fair bit, but I knew their game, my own teammates' games that well, that I knew that if Rowan Smith got it, he was going to reel and kick it to there, and I just knew that where to pop up or where to move first to get that meter on my opponent. Or Scott West would reel left every single time, and kick it 25 metres. So I knew that had to be. So you just knew everything about the main players in your team that were consistently getting the ball that would be able to deliver it to you.
Who was the best player you ever played with?
Oh, Chris Grant was the best in terms of his skill and his freakish ability, what he could do left and right. Phenomenal player.
Full forward or a centre-half forward, Chris Grant?
So he was a centre-half forward and centre-half back. He should have won the Brownlow as a centre-half back.
Yep.
And just missed that due to a dodgy suspension late. So he missed that opportunity. So he was a gun. Scotty West won 7 best and fairest during that period. So he was just a worker, like a seriously just grunt, tough.
I remember when he came
inside midfielder.
Came to the D's as a coach after he retired.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember being just so wrapped with that.
Yeah.
I remember he's not talked about enough anymore, really.
No, that's it. And that's the nature of it, isn't it? We all get a little bit older and
you're done.
we slide out the back.
I want to talk, just talking about your whole career, I'm thinking of all those players, and the thing that comes to my mind the most is that year that you beat the Bombers in the year
2000.
And I would have been 11 and at school, and everyone's saying no one's going to beat the Bombers, and then the Dogs won, and at primary school, in mentality in primary school, it was like, well, now they're going to win the flag. Do you remember what happened that week, or like what the
it was a massive week. Like, we had Terry Wallace was our coach, and he walked into the change rooms on the Monday morning, and he called it Mission Possible because everyone thought it was impossible.
No one could beat them.
That was our theme. It was a Mission Impossible theme the whole week, but we just made it possible. So we went and trained.
Very, very 2000s of you, by the way.
Big time.
The second one's about to come out or has just come out.
So we went and trained at Werribee for the entire week.
You didn't want them to see you?
No, so because we were working on this mass flood where we were just going to put everyone behind the ball and just restrict their scoring.
Right.
And just stay in the game as long as we possibly could.
Was flooding happening?
No.
So you invented the flood?
Well,
it's your fault.
No, floods had happened, but not to this extent. Like, you'd flood with maybe 2 or 3 back.
Chuck a few back.
But not the entire team. It was literally the entire team was behind the ball.
You could tell you wanted to win because you were willing to go to Werribee.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's a really good point.
We'll go hang out in Werribee.
What ground will have us for a week just to practice these tactics? And he sold it to us, and we all bought in. And so we started that game, and we all sort of went behind the ball, and things were working out okay. I remember at quarter time, a couple of Bombers players were sort of like, what are you boys up to today? We threw something at them that they didn't expect.
Yeah.
And so we went, we played well for 3 quarters doing it, and we were down by 20 points, I think it was at 3/4 time.
So they were still ahead. They were still kicking goals.
They were still kicking goals, but it wasn't a massive blowout that it possibly could have been, because that year Essendon was scoring between 100 and 140 points every week. Like, they were dominating. I'm not sure what we held them to that day, but I'm pretty sure it was under 100.
They're in the premiership window for on the couch.
Are they? What?
They would be.
Offense, defense, they're sitting right there. They would have blown that window apart. So 3/4 time, Terry Wallace brings us in 3/4 time, and he says, look, we've done this flood the whole game. We're going to try and win now. So we went back to our normal play. It was just fast attack and try and outscore them. And we caught them off guard a little bit early in that last quarter because they were probably setting up for the flood, and we just went whack and normal positions. And we got back into the game, and then Chris Grant kicked a beauty from the pocket on his left, got us in front. Smitty kicked one, Rowan Smith kicked one after the siren. We win by 7 points. It was amazing. It really was. So, the way that we were set up though definitely set up the win.
That team in that era, you're very it's the Brisbane Lions that are the problem, isn't it? Like for the doggies of that period.
Couple of teams were the problem. Unfortunately for us, the Adelaide Crows beat us in 97, 98 in prelims, so they were the ones. And then it was a big gap before our next lot of prelims, which was 08, 9 and 10, which is the last 3 years that I was playing. And that was 09 was probably our biggest opportunity in that period of time. We were in the finals a fair bit, but never good enough.
The 09 one, I'm trying to remember who was that. Is that a Geelong?
No, we played St Kilda beat us in the prelim.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know whether that was the Gary Ablett or Matty Scarlett toe poke grand final to Gary Ablett, and then Chapman kicks the goal. I think that might have been that year, but they were tough teams to beat. Like we're in the window. Yeah. We were there definitely, but we unfortunately just weren't good enough to beat those teams in prelim finals.
What's it like in Melbourne being an AFL, a recognisable AFL person? And is that something? When's the first time? When it started happening? What was it like? And what's it like now? Is this part of your life being recognised? And what's it like when you go elsewhere?
I've seen the changes from it was receiving letters in the mail, right? To then everyone having full access to you whenever they like now, pretty much. Yeah. If you want it that way as a player or an ex-player, but it was fine because I was at a smaller club, so it was still family days were massive, and we still had a lot of fans, but nothing like the Collingwoods of the world or Richmond or Carlton and those sort of teams. So it was kind of a smoother introduction because you weren't getting smashed all the time, and we were sort of out west a little bit hidden from it all
off Broadway
as well. So that probably helped a little bit, but I've never sort of been one to get smashed too much. By it, I've sort of been reasonably quiet about the way I do things and reasonably private with our off-field sort of stuff, and just we bob our head up when we need to. But
and you're nice on the plane as well.
That's it. Especially when you're sitting in 1A, you're going to be nice, aren't you?
So your transition to the media, I feel like sometimes in the footy audience probably think the media is just a certain thing if you want to do it. But I've heard it's quite competitive. What's it like to be a footballer who then moves to media as a career?
Yeah, it was quite. No, easy is not the word, and that's the first word that come to mind. But,
it's easy.
No, it wasn't. Trust me, it wasn't. But I did the work before I retired. So I did about 8 to 10 years of media work before I retired.
Right.
So
and that was a goal of yours to do
and
that?
And it was. And I had a bit of a deal with the footy club as well, saying that, if my form drops, don't pull the media, because that's the first thing that the club's going to take away from you, because they want you to focus back in on where you're going. So I had a good relationship with the club to say, no, this is what I want to do post-footy, so let me develop myself to do that. And they were awesome. Yeah. So they let me do it regardless of where my form was at. And then from there, so because I did the work, once I stepped and retired, and I'm an organised sort of guy, I have to have things in place ready to go. So I had it all set up that I'd step into Fox Footy once I finished. So it was a great transition, and they've been amazing. Like I've started with them in 2011 and been there since, and it's good. We had to do the yards early, like Brisbane, like Melbourne to Brisbane one night, Brisbane to Perth the next morning, and when we're travelling. And as a youngster in their list, you do have to do the yards.
Do you love it?
And I love it. That's probably the thing is I just love being at the footy. Yeah. So I don't care what game it is. You know what I mean? If I was in Hobart the other week doing Adelaide v North Melbourne, but still loving it because I'm at the footy. Working in the sport that I love. So I will never complain one bit.
Why do you love footy?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I think I love the competitive nature of it. I love the skill of it as well. So they're probably the two main things that I love. And then when getting the opportunity to play, the adrenaline rush is like no other. Like when you're warming up in that last 5 minutes before you enter the ground. Yeah, it's hard to describe because everything's going. Like you got the butterflies. You got this adrenaline hit. You've got blokes bumping into you. It's just really cool to be a part of. And then you run out to the roar and through the banner and then it's probably where you calm down the most because you're up and then you feel at home when you're on the field. You go into sort of this zone where people ask, do you hear anything? And honestly, I never really heard anything because you're just in this zone of work and
you really don't hear anything.
You really don't. Well, personally, I know, and I played in the goal square a lot and still really didn't hear too much that was going on behind the fence directed my way. So it was because you're just in this zone of concentration, I think, that you get caught in that.
I've never been good at sport, but I do perform live a lot, and I had a feeling. I performed last night, as I mentioned before, and I did have a feeling. I'm like,
what are your feelings like prior as you're about to go on?
All I feel before is fucking, this is all shit. All I want to do is get to the place where I feel really in control and really comfortable, because it's almost like before you're thinking of all the what ifs and what could go wrong.
Exactly.
And as soon as you're in it, all you have to worry about, it's very A to B, B to C.
But isn't it amazing though, because the feelings are exactly the same, but isn't it amazing that you've got all that, but once you step up, you might be thinking, oh, what's my first line? What's my first joke? What am I doing? But once you step up naturally,
fully comfortable,
because you're prepared, right? So that's the key to it. That's the key to it all.
It's a mixture of self-confidence, and then also doubt as well, or like the worry.
You have self-doubt. Yeah. I used to drive to the game thinking, am I going to get a kick today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I going to nail my first 5 minutes up on stage?
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. But it's amazing that once you step up there, it just all flows for you. So it becomes more a natural.
Do you feel like that
thing.
In front of camera as well now as well?
A little bit. It's a lot more natural and a lot more comfortable. Early days, you're still learning the craft and, some of the things. But I've been lucky. You mentioned Jason Dunstall before, but he's probably taken me under his wing for the last probably 20 years, to be honest, even before while I was playing. When I did some shows with him. So
he mentors a bit, or?
A little bit. Look, he's just a star guy. So, and there's about 5 other guys at Fox that I've done a lot of work with, from Eddie Maguire at the very top to Anthony Hudson, the best caller in the game, right through to the newcomers. And I work a lot with Eddie Betts at the moment, have a ball with him. So it's really cool.
Eddie's killing it.
He's doing such a good job, and he's improving all the time. And we're starting to see the real Eddie a bit more comfortable now. And he's really funny.
I think were you on Friday, the Saturday night, Geelong D's?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, he was on there, and he was like, Bailey Fritsch kicked this incredible pocket
the dribble goal,
and he goes, it's really incredible, and what a cool thing. It's so great. And then someone said, how many out of 10, how many of those you kick? All of them, I kick it, all of them. Just this pure arrogance.
But you know what? He's right. He would have kicked all of them. But now we're starting to actually see that with Ed. Yeah. And he's an hilarious man when he gets going.
No, I've got to get him on. Got to get him on. Is there a dynamic in the media of ex-footy players who come from this sort of, this different world? How is it seeing footy players? Is there a sport vibe to it? Is everyone nice? Or is there competitiveness?
No. Everyone's. I think we're really good with each other because we see each other on the weekends. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But we. At Fox, we've got some guys that have achieved so much in the game. Like we're talking like Dermy 5 day, 5 night, Jonathan Brown with all his flags. The list goes on with the amount of achievements and some of the huge names that have been in the game. So, honestly, when I first started, it was the old leave the egos at the door, and that has been the case the whole time at Fox.
That's cool.
And the good part is that we've got the staff there, the producers, all the staff are like next level.
Right.
And the way they look after us, they produce all the content and everything you see, and we're talking during the week to set it all up.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to deliver it, but they set it up for us, so all the vision, everything. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes that no one sees. And the guys and girls that do that are just absolutely brilliant.
Nerd stuff now. So you're doing like Saturday night. What's it called? Saturday Night Fever? No, the Saturday day.
Yeah, after the game. Yes.
Or the whole show.
The whole show. Yeah.
You do the pre, and then do you go into another room and watch it? And when you're in that room, are you like all just sitting around on a couch, or
pretty much?
Is there food?
Yeah. So what?
What is there? Do they put food? Do they put food out for you, or do you bring your own?
No,
food?
We'll have dinner.
Yeah. And you Uber it?
No, it's all organised.
Fox Footy get you food?
Through work, yeah. So we'll have dinner set up, and basically we sit on the couch. There's a couple of couches. We've got normally 2 TVs because there's 2 games going on. We've got the one that we have to focus on with an eye on the other one.
You're writing notes?
We're writing notes. The producers are sitting with us, and we're like, okay, we'll see this passage of play here. Let's lab that up, and we'll go get it labbed up so you can all the drawings and all the highlights really sort of punch a little bit more and helps us describe it a little bit better. So we're working through all of that.
And what are you eating?
What are we eating? Asian fusion is probably the number one on the menu.
That's very South Melbourne of it.
I get over that, though.
Is that like a miss-chew kind of situation?
Well, I don't know that does ring a bell, though. I think we've had that before, but I get over it a little bit.
Yeah, because it's always be like a curry or something.
So I'll get a side grilled or something like that. Just to
David Zeta's always there's a schnitz nearby as well.
There is. I get a schnitz every now and then. Yeah, because I just can't do the same. I like it, but the same thing.
It's heavy as well.
Week. Yeah.
If I was on TV, I would not want to be burping either.
A lot of it's chili based as well. That doesn't sit that well with me either.
So this is something else, but you also work with Zeta. So Zena. Yes. I had David Zeta on.
David Zeta before. We're with him every Saturday night.
Yeah, you should bring Zeta on as a side. Yes. What does Zena do?
So Zena it's my wife's business. So Donna created Zena at about 7 years ago. So it's a protective vest for females playing contact sports. So it's got breast and rib protection. So about 7 years ago, the AFLW started to sort of kick in and clubs started to separate the girls being able to have their own competitions and things like that, which was awesome. And that's where we started in footy because of our background.
Yeah.
And it's just a lightweight vest, goes over your crop top or bra, and it gives you great protection from being tackled or hitting the ground or the ball hitting you, depending on what stage of development you're at in the footy world. But it's sort of evolved from that now over the years, and it took us 3 or 4 years to get it right, to get exactly what we wanted, because putting it on an athlete, it has to be spot on from the start. It has to be comfortable and be able to not restrict your movement or any of those sort of things. So
cool.
It's awesome. It only weighs about 120 grams. It's so light.
120 grams?
Yeah, it's so good. She's done an awesome job. And so I'm fully entrenched in that now. It's sort of, since retiring, it's got the competitive juices going again, because we want to be the best, best protective wear out there for females, and we're exclusive to females only, which is great. And the female sport is growing rapidly around the world, but in particular here in Australia. So we started with footy, and now there's rugby and soccer and lacrosse and softball and blind sports and martial arts and just all these sports, roller derby that wear our vest now. So it's really cool that we've got the more traditional sports, but we've learned so much about all these other different sports that wear our vest as well. It's been great fun to dive into something completely different and new for us, and we've had to learn on our feet. But we're at a stage now where we've really tested it in the market now. The girls love it, so we're on our way hopefully to try and scale it, and away we go.
Congrats to you and Donna. That's really exciting. I would love to have Donna on at some point as well to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she would love that.
Yeah, it'd be great. Brad, lovely to chat to you in person. You didn't disappoint. You're so positive and happy. I kind of want to see
some drama or something.
I want to see what I can do. But I'll try it next time you're on. But thank you so much for coming on, mate.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thanks for listening. Bounce that pill.